Welcome to Lift Up Your Hearts podcast. This is a podcast of my secret public prayer life. It is a podcast really that I'm just trying to use the tools that I've been given in how to pray and how to lift up my heart to the Lord, to express my love for Him and most importantly, to receive His love. I just got back from a retreat, and I think it was just such a blessed time. I was reminded of my 30-day Ignatian exercises when one of the directors said, the most efficacious thing that we can do is, as humans, as beloved sons and daughters, is receive God's love. And it's just difficult, I think, in the everyday life to do that. And we get busy, and I think even going into the retreat, I had a certain sense of, all right, let's figure out this next phase of life. And I think there was a sense of wanting to discern a lot. People use that word in the church and religiously. And I found very quickly that it was going to be much better for me to just put aside any plans or hopes that I had for the time and to just receive God's love. And it was a beautiful time, and I'm still kind of soaking in that peace and that love that He's pouring out upon me and trying to do that more in my daily life. I think a lot of times my prayer turns into discernment. What should I do about this, Lord? How should it, and I am indeed doing it the right way. I'm asking Him what He wants, but not enough of my prayer is just receiving Him love me. And that is one of the tools of this Ignatian prayer. And I think that was one of the things that came back to me was the beginning of the Ignatian prayer. I take the moment of an Our Father, and I contemplate how the Lord looks upon me with love. And I think it's a good thing to do that every day. Not just even the moment of an Our Father. Maybe take 10 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever it is. So in this podcast, I try to teach the ways that I've been taught how to pray, and that's an Ignatian, St. Ignatius of Loyola, an Ignatian style, which is engaging our imagination. It's really, really engaging our imagination, something we haven't done probably as kids. One of my daughter's favorite shows is Bluey. I like that show because they use their imagination a lot. They play make-believe a lot. And we're certainly not playing make-believe, but we're allowing the Lord to speak to our hearts, and then we're speaking back to Him. I liken it to cave diving when we're going in and we're trying to see new things, and we find a nugget, and we bring it back to Him and say, what is this? What should I do with this? And that's what we do with the things that strike us. There was a quote, I'm reading a book on Christian culture, and this quote struck me. It was talking about teaching how to pray. It's from the Dominican Sisters of St. Cecilia. And they just have a quote, probably in their rule or something, that said, "Please remember that merely saying the prayers is not the goal. The goal is praying." And then they kind of give a definition. Personally encountering the Lord, listening to Him, and giving Him your heart. Giving Him this is me now, giving Him the deepest parts of it, the things that really strike me, the things that are most difficult, the things that maybe I don't want to talk about with anyone else. Bringing those nuggets to him and saying, Lord, what is this? And ask him, why don't I want to talk to anyone about this? Why am I ashamed of this? Can you heal me here? Talk to him as a loving father, because he is. He is a loving father who wants to pour down his love upon you so you can receive it, so that you can be his beloved sons and daughters. Because we can't really be who we are unless we know who we are. We can't really act unless we know our identity. Just like I don't know how to use a tool unless I know what it's made for. What is this tool? What is this thing that I'm holding? And then I know how to use it. Otherwise, I'm going to be using it incredibly improperly. And to know, to fully act as a human, as a beloved daughter, as a beloved son, I need to be able to receive that sonship from the Father, the Creator. And I can do that in prayer. I can do that in this podcast. We do it through the Scripture, through specifically the Sunday Gospel. And I do that not because they're always super conducive to this type of prayer. I do that because it's probably the gospel that the majority of us hear every single week, and it's accessible and it's available. You know, I said last week, I always have material to pray with. I always have material to pray with because the church has a schedule and a calendar for the Gospels, for all the readings, but specifically for the Gospels where Jesus plays a part, huge part, of course. This is his life on earth, his ministry. And for me to be able to meditate and contemplate that, I have something for every single day. And the nice thing about the Sunday Gospels is they go in this cycle that we read through the majority of a whole gospel. This year A, so it's like A, B, and C cycles. This year A, we're going through almost the whole Gospel of Matthew. And so this week we're in the 23rd chapter. We're getting towards the end because this is the end of the liturgical year. We only have a couple more weeks before Advent. Advent begins the new liturgical year. So we're getting to the end of the Gospel of Matthew. And just to set the table a little bit, before we get into this, here's how we're going to go through it. Before we start, we contemplate how the Lord looks upon us with love. And we read through the Gospel. We try to get the overall story, what's happening, who are the characters, where's the scene, when does this happen, kind of just get a little bit immersed in it. Let it wash over you like a waterfall. It's kind of immersive. You can't really hear anything else. You close your eyes, can't see anything else. And then we read it through again to try to get the scene even further. What is it? Where are we? What does it look like? What does it smell like? What am I wearing? And we start to enter into the story. You can read it 2 or 3 times. I'll just do it 2 times here. And we'll pick a character. We can be one of the characters, and we can imagine what it would be like to be one of those characters. Today I'm going to be one of the disciples. Disciples are being spoken to by Jesus in this gospel today. And you can enter into it just as yourself. You can enter into it as maybe one particular disciple. What does it feel like to be Matthew in this situation? What does it feel like to be John or Andrew or James, the greater, lesser, or a lesser known disciple? Simon the Zealot, maybe. you have a background. And you can pick one of these specific characters, but you can also kind of be one of the disciples as yourself. What does it feel like for Jesus to say these things? You're there, at the feet of him. And then we take it to him. We take those nuggets. Jesus, what is this that you're trying to say to me? I'm getting these feelings. Why do I feel like that? I feel anxious about something. What is that? What is that, Jesus? And we just talk to him. We just encounter him. There's a lot of vulnerability with him, and we give him our heart. That's why this is called Lift Up Your Hearts. This is meant to help us receive God's love because of an encounter with him, the beloved, the Father who loves us and wants to give us good gifts and cares for us. So I encourage you, this isn't just like a teaching how to do all these things. I encourage you to do it along with me. I'm going to give you what was happening in my own heart. That's why I jokingly call this my secret public prayer life, because it kind of is. This is what's happening in my heart. This is genuine. I don't script this. This is what's happening in my prayer life, and I take this to prayer the rest of the week. And this is what I pray about for the rest of the week, including into Sunday. So we take the moment of an Our Father and contemplate how the Lord looks upon us with love. Imagine his gaze upon you with love. This is the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 23, verses 1 through 12. Jesus spoke to the crowds and to his disciples, saying, "The scribes and the Pharisees have taken their seat on the chair of Moses. Therefore do and observe all things whatsoever they tell you, but do not follow their example. For they preach, but they do not practice. They tie up heavy burdens, hard to carry, and lay them on people's shoulders, but they will not lift a finger to move them. All their works are performed to be seen. They widen their phylacteries and lengthen their tassels. They love places of honor at banquets, seats of honor in synagogues, greetings in marketplaces, and the salutation, Rabbi. As for you, do not be called Rabbi. You have but one teacher, and you are all brothers. Call no one on earth your father. You have but one Father in heaven. Do not be called Master. You have but one Master, the Christ. The greatest among you must be your servant. Whoever exalts himself will be humbled, but whoever humbles himself will be exalted." The first thing I notice is the previous dialogues. The Pharisees and the scribes are there, and Jesus is addressing them. And he's saying to them, you guys are not living this life. Now he's addressing, it's all, maybe I even imagine him kind of turning around. Or maybe, last week they tested Jesus. So maybe, and it doesn't even say what happened, maybe they left, maybe they walked away. So I'm kind of imagining them walking away. And then Jesus is addressing the people there that watched all this, the crowds and his disciples. So some of these people are not his disciples, this isn't just the 12, but it's also the 72, the larger crowd, but also just people, other Jews that were following the scribes and the Pharisees, most likely, that maybe haven't even, because this is Jesus's, it depends on what you understand. Jesus is, maybe this is the first time he's coming into Jerusalem, but he certainly wasn't from there. He's not living there, so he's coming into Jerusalem. There's probably a lot of people that, have never heard him before. This is the first time hearing him, or they've only heard about him, and then they saw all this stuff happen, and now he's addressing this larger crowd. He says, the scribes and the Pharisees have taken their seats in the chairs of Moses. Therefore, do and observe all things whatsoever they tell you. So Jesus saying there's a certain amount of obedience because God has given them that place. Therefore, you should listen to them because my Father has appointed them there. However, they don't practice it. They tie up burdens hard to carry and lay them on people's shoulders, but they don't lift a finger to help. All their works are performed to be seen. They widen their phylacteries and lengthen their tassels. These are prayer tassels, and phylacteries are the bindings around their arms, and to be seen, of course. They lengthen their tassels. Everyone can see them. Look at me, look at me. I'm holy. They love places of honor, banquets, synagogues. They love to be greeted. I love to be greeted. Yeah, I love to be greeted. They love to be called rabbi. Call no one rabbi. Call no one father or master. The greatest among you must be your servant. And whoever exalts himself will be humbled, but whoever humbles himself will be exalted. You're listening to this, and maybe even, just thinking, maybe even the disciples possibly think, okay, maybe Jesus is overthrowing the Pharisees, but maybe we're going to take their place. Maybe other people are thinking they're going to take their place. I don't know what's going through the disciples' heads. If you're one of them or you're part of the crowd, this new leader comes in and says, they would have experienced this. They would have experienced this type of life. This wouldn't have been new to them. They wouldn't have heard this and thought, oh yeah, I guess the Pharisees do, yeah, they do all that stuff. Jesus is saying something to them I think is probably pretty obvious. They do all this stuff, but that's not what the kingdom is all. This is what he's saying in some way. That's not what the kingdom's about. That's what I'm feeling. That's not what the kingdom's about. If you want to be the greatest, be the servant. Whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted. I think it'd be pretty obvious for the people that has not been the case for the scribes and the Pharisees. What does that feel like when someone comes in and, they probably weren't, trying to overthrow the scribes and the Pharisees, but then someone comes in and tells them something that's not right, and you probably kind of understood that, but then someone tells you that's all wrong. But you've kind of been getting the message that that's what you should be doing. To be holy means you look holy. You lengthen your tassels. and all the prayer paraphernalia is obvious. And then that's been reiterated for I don't know how long, and then Jesus comes in and says, no, that's not what this is about. It's kind of reminded me of that prayer that the Dominicans of the Saint Cecilia said, prayer is about an encounter with Christ, not about just saying prayers, It kind of reminds me of this image of the Pharisees and the scribes just, doing all the holy looking stuff. But they hadn't really encountered the person and hadn't really fallen in love with him. Someone said that to me recently. I asked them, I said, what was the encounter for you? And she said, I was sitting at home in prayer and I just said, Jesus, I want to fall in love with you. I thought, dang, that's it. That's it. Jesus, I want to fall in love with you. I want to receive your love, your tenderness, your mercy. So this time when I read it through, we're going to try to really immerse ourselves into this story and be one of the crowd of the disciples. And with all this kind of background, how does it feel for Jesus to say this? He's coming in and he's kind of changing the paradigm of what a leader is and what holiness looks like. That's what seems to be the message here. What does a leader look like? What does holiness look like? It's not what you've seen. That's not it. That's not my kingdom. Take a minute to place yourself in the story at the feet of Jesus. Allow him to look at you tenderly with love and say these words to you. What does it mean to you for him to say this? And then bring those things to him. Whatever strikes you, as Father Gallagher says, just stop there and then bring that to him. If I'm reading and something strikes you, or I'm talking about something and something strikes you, just push pause or stop. I don't care. This is not for views or listens or downloads. This is to help show people that this deep prayer life is possible, and it's reachable, and it's doable for everyone, absolutely everyone. So just stop, push pause, whatever. You can come back to it later. I don't care. All right. Gospel according to Matthew, chapter 23, verse 1 through 12. Jesus spoke to the crowds and to his disciples, saying, The scribes and the Pharisees have taken their seat on the chair of Moses. Therefore do and observe all things whatsoever they tell you, but do not follow their example. For they preach, but they do not practice. They tie up heavy burdens, hard to carry, and lay them on people's shoulders, but they will not lift a finger to move them. All their works are performed to be seen. They widen their phylacteries and lengthen their tassels. They love places of honor at banquets, seats of honor in synagogues, greetings in marketplaces, and the salutation, Rabbi. As for you, do not be called Rabbi. You have but one teacher, and you are all brothers. Call no one on earth your father. You have but one Father in heaven. Do not be called Master. You have but one Master, the Christ. The greatest among you must be your servant. Whoever exalts himself will be humbled, but whoever humbles himself will be exalted. As I said, I picked one of the disciples, and I was just, I think it was hard for me to hear this message, because for so long I had wanted to be like the Pharisees and the scribes, and there's a certain sense in me to want to be known as holy. I think there's a little bit of that that's good, but most of it's probably not. There's a little sense of me, even just being at church, of wanting to look holy. Sometimes that's why I sit in the back, or sometimes why I sit in the front. Sitting in the middle for me is just hard. It feels like I just feel like I care too much about people looking at me. And I know my sense that I want to look like I'm holy. Maybe it's because I feel like I'm not. And I do feel a sense of just asking the Lord for that grace to not care what others think, to just try to be in love with Him, and to give my life to Him without anyone caring what I look like. Partially because I want to be a good example, but I know part of it is my own pride and vanity and wanting to look good for other people, caring what I look like for them. I felt all of that being one of the disciples, sitting there thinking, I really want that. I really want to be holy like that. I want to not care, but I care. And I'm asking the Lord, even now, Lord, please help me to not care. I want to not care. I just feel a sense in me that I do care. I do care what I look like and other people think. And I think also partially because I feel like I feel like I'm not holy, that I have so many imperfections. More than just imperfections. If only they were just imperfections. I have lots of faults, and I would love to hide them from everyone and to lengthen my tassels and make it look like I'm holy. But I know there's also a lot of value in being vulnerable with other people. And I desire to look like I have it all together. I think Jesus is telling me that, you don't have to pretend to be something you're not. And to be humble and be okay with that. And be there with the Lord and give Him your life. I hope this has been beneficial to you. I hope to see you next week. If you found some value in these podcasts, I encourage you to share them with others. My goal here is to really just help people learn how to pray and to show that it's doable. It's doable for everyone. I love you. I'm praying for you, and I'll see you next week. God bless.